Hey everyone, welcome back. Trevor here with Maker Experiment, and today I've been working on a sign for Jon B, and this one has got to be one of the more complex ones I've ever done. It has some LED lighting, it went through CNC machining, laser machining, and I'm going to share that whole process with you right now. So let's get started. I started this project by getting the design from Jon B. This included his logo with the text rigged. The first thing that I did was separate this into the different layers that I needed to cut. Because this sign is being backlit, I'm actually going to have multiple layers. First, the background layer, which is in red, is going to be cut on a CNC machine because it's about 5 feet long. This will be made from 1/2-inch MDF. Standoffs will then be added to the MDF background and attach to 1/2-inch MDF letters. These letters will then be screwed on to those same standoffs. For the lettering, I decided to go ahead and add a third layer. The third layer is going to be the same rigged text, inset about 1/4 of an inch. This layer will be made from 1/4-inch MDF and will be glued to the front. This will conceal all of the fasteners from the front side of the sign. Now that the layers are planned out, I'm going to cut the background layer and the first layer of the letters all on a CNC machine. Then the 1/4-inch layer of letters that's going to conceal the fasteners will be made on a laser. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to videotape the machining process. I started by drilling countersunk holes into the front of the 1/2-inch thick MDF letters. This will ensure that the screws that are going into the standoffs will sit flush with that letter face. Then, once I go to stick the front layer of the letters on, it'll completely cover all of the screws. I then repeated this process for the background of the sign, because I want all screws to sit flush with the sign itself. The only way that I'll be able to take these letters off is by taking the screws out of the background layer and then removing the letters. The screws that are attached to the letters are going to be covered by a glued panel and will be permanently part of the sign. After all of the holes were drilled, then came the most exciting part. Sanding. And sanding. And sanding some more. This process took quite a while, just because there were so many pieces. Once the most exhilarating part of this project was done, the sanding, I went about doing a dry fit of all the pieces. This was to make sure that all of the holes lined up, that all of the fasteners were the right length, and that everything went together as expected. After the dry fit was a success, I went through, took everything apart, and started the process of painting all of the pieces. All of the letters in this case are a flat black Rust-Oleum paint, and the red is an apple red Rust-Oleum paint. Before I painted these, I coated them with shellac just to give the MDF a base coat so that the paint wouldn't just soak into the MDF material. For this sign, I purchased an LED light kit off of Amazon. This kit had 2 reels of waterproof LED strips. Because they're waterproof, they have a protective film that covers up the copper contacts. So I had to cut this coating off down by the contacts so I can then solder to those contacts. Once the waterproof housing was taken off of the strips, I started to lay out all of the LED strips and cut the wire to the length that I needed it. After cutting the wires, I went through the process of stripping the wires down and then adding tin solder to each of the wire ends. After adding solder to the copper contacts on the LED strips and adding solder to the ends of the wires, I then began the process of soldering the wires directly to those contacts to create a secure joint and be able to transfer the light from one strip to another. Once I finished attaching the LED strips to the back of each letter, I then went through the process of adding the letter to the sign. To do this, I fed the wires through a hole that I made in the background of the sign. Then I lined up the standoffs that were on the back of the letter with the holes in the background of the sign and secured every letter into place with screws. Once all of this was in place, I went through the process of soldering everything together and connecting each of the letters. Now this process isn't in the video, but all I had to do was line up the same colored wires, solder those wires together, and then put electrical tape around them. Once it was done correctly, the entire sign lit up at once. After all of the letters were in place and the sign was working properly, I began adding the letter fronts to cover up the screws that were on the front side of the sign. Each of these letters was inset about 1/4 of an inch from the layer behind it, so that it added a little bit of depth as well as contrast. To attach these letter fronts, I used some Loctite CA glue and spread it evenly around the back of the letters, and then pressed those letters onto the front of the layer behind it. This held the pieces securely in place and covered up the screws. I hope all of you enjoyed watching the process of me making the sign as much fun as I had actually making the sign. Now, soldering was new to me for this project, so I learned a lot, and I hope to carry those skills into future projects. But if you like what you saw and you want to continue seeing more videos like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'll help me a lot. If you have any other ideas for sign videos or other videos that you want to see, whether it's lasers, soldering, whatever it might be, please let me know. I'm also going to try to make a video about the troubleshooting I had to do on the LED wiring for this. I had a few hiccups at first. So if you want to see all that, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.